Welcome to Congress in Context.
Thanks for having me back.
So imagine a machine, right, where the operators actually get rewarded when the gears completely lock up.
Yeah, which makes no sense if you think about it.
Exactly. You'd think the goal of any complex system is to keep moving,
Yeah.
to, produce an outcome.
Yeah.
But when you look at the legislative engine in Washington, D.C., you realize it isn't built for smooth, synchronized movement at all. It's built for friction.
Oh, it's entirely by design. I mean, the founders built an engine that was meant to be difficult to operate.
Yeah.
And modern politicians have just learned how to, weaponize every single lever and emergency brake in that system.
And deciphering how they use those levers is exactly why we are here. So the mission of this deep dive today is to synthesize the congressional record for today, which is Tuesday, March 18th, 2026.
Right. Hot off the presses.
Exactly. We are taking you listening directly onto the House and Senate floors and also into the formal written records to understand exactly what's happening in D.C. and, crucially, why it actually matters to your local community.
Because that's the real value of the congressional record, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
It gives us absolutely everything.
Mm.
You get the highly publicized theatrical floor debates, sure, but you also get the quieter and honestly infinitely more revealing extensions of remarks section.
Fine print.
Exactly, the fine print of the legislative process that most people never actually see.
Now, a quick heads up for you listening before we dive into today's stack of sources. We are stepping into some highly radioactive topics today.
Oh, yeah. Very intense stuff today.
Yeah, we are looking at debates over election integrity, ongoing foreign conflicts, and immigration. And I want to be explicitly clear right up front.
Okay.
We are not picking sides here. We aren't endorsing any of the viewpoints we're about to discuss. Our goal is simply to be your objective translators, just reading you the blueprints of the arguments happening right now in your government.
And objectivity is essential today. Because if you just listen to the rhetoric, it sounds like pure chaos.
It really does.
So my goal for this deep dive is to help you spot the underlying patterns beneath all that partisanship.
Yeah.
We want to, peel back the political theater and show you the actual mechanics at play.
And there's literally no one better suited to do that with me. When it comes to the procedural maze of Washington, I am relying on you to help us see the matrix here.
I'll give my best.
So if we want to understand the friction in Congress today, we first have to look at the loudest arguments happening simultaneously on the national stage. Let's start on the House floor with House Joint Resolution 139.
Ah, yes.
This is the Balanced Budget Amendment.
This was undeniably the major flashpoint of the morning. You had Representative Biggs of Arizona arguing fiercely for strict fiscal restraint, and his entire argument is anchored to one staggering number, which is a $38 trillion national debt.
Wow, $38 trillion.
Yeah. His stance is that for generations, Congress has essentially maxed out the national credit card. And without a constitutional mandate explicitly forcing them to balance the budget, the system will just never organically stop overspending.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because the pushback from Representative Raskin of Maryland was, it was just as intense, but focused on a totally different threat. He argued this amendment is essentially a diversionary tactic. His position is that if you legally force a perfectly balanced budget right now, it would require these catastrophic cuts that would just gut the social safety net.
Right, specifically harming the poor, the working class, and, seniors on fixed incomes.
Exactly. It's kind of like a family arguing over a mountain of debt. One parent says, we have to cut up the credit cards immediately, and the other parent says, well, if we do that, we can't afford groceries next week.
That is an excellent way to frame it, because the friction isn't just about the numbers. It's about the definition of what is structurally essential versus what is a luxury.
But here's where I get hung up, and I'm sure anyone listening is wondering the exact same thing. Why are they fighting over a constitutional amendment?
Yeah, it's a huge hurdle.
Right. If overspending is the problem, why not just pass a regular standard bill that says, hey, we promised to balance the budget this year?
That right there is the pivotal architectural question. Think of regular legislation like the software of the government.
Okay.
You can pass a regular bill that balances the budget, but it only binds the current Congress. The very next year, a brand new Congress can just write a new piece of software, pass a new law, and start deficit spending all over again.
Oh, I see. So a regular law is just too flimsy. It can just be overwritten by whoever is in power next.
Precisely. A constitutional amendment, however, is the hardware. It permanently alters the foundational rules of the entire machine. But changing the hardware is intentionally grueling.
I mean, you need, what, 2/3?
Yes, it requires a two-thirds majority in both chambers of Congress, plus ratification by three-fourths of all the state legislatures.
Which, let's be honest, is a mathematically impossible hurdle in today's highly polarized climate.
Oh, totally.
They know they don't have the numbers to actually amend the Constitution.
Exactly. And what's fascinating here is how this House debate perfectly mirrors the intensity happening at the exact same time over in the Senate.
Oh, the SAVE Act.
Yes, they are debating Senate Bill 1383, the Save American Voter Eligibility Act.
Hmm.
Both of these are incredibly high-stakes ideological battles where the actual passing of the law isn't really the point. The messaging is the point.
Right, the SAVE Act. This is the bill requiring proof of citizenship to register to vote in federal elections.
Correct. On one side of the Senate floor, you had Senator Thune of South Dakota, Senator Kennedy of Louisiana, and they're arguing that requiring physical proof of citizenship is a fundamental, non-negotiable necessity to protect election integrity. Their stance is straightforward.
Yeah.
Only American citizens should vote in American elections, and adding this verification step is just a common-sense safeguard against potential fraud.
But then you look at the other side of the aisle. You have Senator Warnock of Georgia and Senator Murphy of Connecticut offering a completely contrasting reality.
Very different perspective, yeah.
Yeah, they argue that this bill is a solution in search of a problem.
Yeah.
Their position is that non-citizen voting is already federally illegal and statistically, virtually non-existent.
Right.
They argue that requiring physical documentation like hunting down a certified birth certificate or paying for a passport is a deliberate mechanic designed to suppress legitimate working-class voters who might not have easy, immediate access to those documents.
That if we step back, this gives us our primary takeaway from the national stage today. Both chambers are entirely deadlocked in these massive foundational wars over the rules of the game itself.
Yeah.
Whether it's the national debt or election security, these lawmakers are just fighting for the core values of their respective bases.
But if they are deadlocked, and if they know neither the Balanced Budget Amendment nor the SAVE Act are actually going to pass, why are they wasting hours of floor time yelling about it?
Because for the politicians operating the machine, forcing a vote on these issues is crucial fuel for their campaigns. Even if they lose the vote, the messaging is achieved.
Ah, so they get a point to the record.
Exactly. Get to go back to their constituents and say, look at the congressional record. I stood on the floor and fought for you, and my opponent voted against you.
So when two sides are this fundamentally deadlocked on these giant ideological issues, the actual debate sort of stops mattering.
Yeah, pretty much.
What matters is who can weaponize the rule book better to trap their opponents. Which brings us perfectly to how this machine actually operates. Let's look at the actual congressional mechanics of how things get done or deliberately derailed on the floor.
Yes. A masterclass in this happened today during the debate over House Resolution 5556. This is the Protecting Access for Hunters and Anglers Act.
Right. This one was sponsored by Representative Whitman of Virginia, and the underlying bill prevents the Secretary of the Interior and the Secretary of Agriculture from banning the use of lead ammunition and fishing tackle on federal lands.
Right.
Obviously, this is a massive issue for outdoorsmen and the hunting industry, but as they were debating it, Representative Dingell of Michigan tried to derail it using a very specific procedural tool called a motion to recommit. Walk us through what that actually means.
So a motion to recommit is essentially a parliamentary trapdoor. It is a last-ditch, 11th-hour tool used exclusively by the minority party right before the final vote on a bill is called.
Okay.
The goal is to either kill the bill entirely by sending it back to committee or to force the majority party to adopt very specific, highly politically sensitive language.
Wait, how does that trap the majority?
Because Representative Dingell didn't just say, let's kill the bill. She offered a motion to recommit with instructions to amend the bill so that federal land managers could still make science-based decisions to protect wildlife from lead poisoning.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, rather than facing a blanket ban on their regulatory authority.
So she forces a live public vote on whether or not the government should use science-based decisions.
Exactly.
And if the majority party votes no, because they want to protect the original hunting bill, they are now officially on the record voting against science and wildlife protection.
You've got it. That's the trap. The motion failed, by the way. It was a very narrow margin, 206 to 209.
Yeah.
And the underlying bill ultimately passed.
Mm-hmm.
But Representative Dingell succeeded in her mechanical goal. She forced every single member of the majority to put their name on a piece of paper rejecting an environmental caveat, which will absolutely be used in campaign attack ads this fall.
Unbelievable. And we saw another one of these obscure procedural mechanics over in the Senate today. Senator Booker of New Jersey used something called a motion to discharge on Senate Joint Resolution 118.
Right.
This was a war powers resolution regarding the ongoing military conflict in Iran.
Yeah, a motion to discharge is a fascinating, powerful, and rarely successful lever to pull. To understand it, you kind of have to understand the bottleneck of Congress.
Okay, lay it out.
Most bills die in committee because a committee chairman has immense power. If a chairman doesn't like a bill, they just put it in a drawer and refuse to ever bring it up for a vote. The bill is effectively trapped.
So the chairman is like a gatekeeper who can just starve a bill of oxygen.
Precisely. A motion to discharge is how you bypass that gatekeeper. A senator can file this motion to officially discharge the committee from its duties.
It literally yanks the bill out of the committee's hands.
Yes. It yanks it out and forces it directly onto the open Senate floor for a full vote. Senator Booker used this mechanic to force a highly uncomfortable debate on the president's authorization to conduct military strikes in Iran, completely bypassing the Foreign Relations Committee.
Here's where it gets really interesting. I want you listening to consider this for a second. We just talked about the motion to recommit and the motion to discharge. Are these procedural maneuvers actually meant to change the law?
Yeah.
Or are they just highly choreographed political theater meant to generate campaign commercials? Because if Senator Booker knows his discharge motion probably won't pass, why go through the charade?
It's an essential question. And the reality is that they function as both. Yes, the minority party knows these motions will likely fail, but the legislative machine doesn't just produce laws. It produces accountability. By forcing the vote, Senator Booker compels his colleagues to explicitly go on the record regarding congressional oversight of a war. And occasionally, the political pressure is so immense that members of the majority defect and the motion actually succeeds. It's a tactical gamble.
So we have these massive national debates, and we have the intricate procedural judo of weaponizing the rules. But how do these grinding gears actually affect the people outside the building?
That's their real question.
Yeah. To find out, we have to look past the televised speeches and turn to the extensions of remarks in the morning hour debates. This is where national policy collides with local reality.
The extensions of remarks is arguably the most vital yet ignored section of the congressional record. Think of it as a historical appendix.
Okay.
Members of Congress are allowed to submit written statements, speeches, and tributes that are printed in the official record, exactly as if they had stood at the microphone and spoken them aloud on the House floor.
Even though the room was completely empty or they weren't even in the building?
Correct. It's a way to legally log their stance into the permanent history of the United States.
And reading through them today gives us incredible insight into vulnerabilities that get missed on cable news. For instance, today, severe weather and travel issues grounded several lawmakers.
Yeah, lots of flight delays.
Exactly. While not spoken on the floor, Representative Correa of California and Representative Diaz-Balart of Florida submitted a statement emphasizing that they missed crucial votes today. Specifically, they noted missing the votes on H.R. 4294, the Mitigation Action and Waterman Support Act, and S. 3971, the Small Business Innovation Act.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, those seemingly bureaucratic written extensions reveal profound local stress.
Yeah, they really do.
You have watermen in the coastal economies of Florida and California relying on maritime mitigation to keep their boats in the water. You have small tech firms desperate for innovation security just to keep their doors open.
Right.
Their livelihoods are literally hanging on the bills moving through the chamber. And yet, because of something as mundane as a delayed flight, their elected representatives couldn't push the voting button on their behalf.
But by submitting it to the extensions of remarks, they are essentially printing a receipt for their constituents back home. I wasn't there, but I am still fighting for your industry.
Exactly. It's proof of representation.
And we saw that same desperate dedication to local crises during the morning hour debates today. Morning hour is a specific block of time where members can speak to an empty chamber about almost any topic they want before the main legislative brawl begins.
Yeah, and today was heavy.
It was. Representative Smith of Nebraska used his time to detail an absolute catastrophe, the Nebraska wildfire crisis.
The sheer scale of what he put into the congressional record is just staggering. Over 826,000 acres burned in less than a week. He noted that the Morrill fire alone consumed more than 643,000 acres.
And he used his time to vividly illustrate the devastation. He wasn't talking about abstract fiscal policy or constitutional theory here. He was talking about real Nebraskans.
Real people. Yeah.
He detailed tens of millions of dollars in lost fencing, over 35,000 head of cattle suddenly without grass for the grazing season. He used the national stage of the House floor to plead for federal disaster assistance for local cattle producers who have literally watched their generational livelihoods turn to ash overnight.
It's a stark, sobering reminder. While Washington is throwing sparks debating the philosophy of a balanced budget, local communities are quite literally on fire.
Yeah.
Representative Smith's speech was an attempt to bridge that gap. He was trying to force the smell of smoke and the desperation of Nebraska farmers directly into the Capitol building.
Which brings us to the most difficult part of today's deep dive. When you transition from the massive structural debates to these local crises, you start to see the actual human toll hidden inside the congressional record.
You really do.
The machine of Congress doesn't care about feelings, but the people operating it sometimes do. And the contrast between how they mourn and how they fight reveals the true scope of our partisan divide.
We saw this vividly today regarding the ongoing conflict in Iran. As we mentioned, the debate on the floor over the War Powers Resolution was incredibly aggressive.
Oh, yeah. Very heated.
It was heavily partisan finger-pointing regarding executive overreach and global oil prices. It was a loud, performative battle.
But then you flip to the extensions of remarks and you read the submission from Representative Sykes of Ohio. In the exact same building, on the exact same day, she submitted a memorial for 6 American service members who died in an aircraft crash over Iraq related to this specific conflict.
Right.
She named the 3 Ohio National Guard members, Captain Seth Koval, Captain Curtis Angst, and Technical Sergeant Tyler Simmons. She talked about their families, their dreams, and the absolute void left in their communities.
It was a moment of quiet, devastating local mourning. And it stands in incredibly jarring contrast to the political point scoring that was happening over the war authorization on the floor. It highlights how the legislative machine can sometimes feel entirely disconnected from the human lives it governs.
But even when lawmakers are forced to look at the human lives they govern, the machine still finds a way to grind to a halt. And this brings us to what I think is the most important aha moment of today's record.
Why, yes.
It's a perfect example of why things are so broken right now, and it involves the TSA Pay Act, Senate Bill 4127.
Yes, this exchange on the Senate floor was incredibly revealing. Senator Warnock of Georgia went to the floor and pleaded via unanimous consent to simply pass a bill to pay TSA workers.
Just to pay them?
Yes. These are federal employees currently standing at airport checkpoints across the country, working without paychecks due to a lapse in Homeland Security appropriations. He asked for a clean, simple bill. Just issue the paychecks.
Okay, wait, let me pause you right there. Unanimous consent, meaning literally every single person in the room has to agree, and if even one single senator stands up and says no, the whole thing stops dead in its tracks.
Exactly. It's the ultimate speak now or forever hold your peace mechanic in the Senate. It bypasses all normal debate rules, provided absolutely no one objects.
And someone objected?
They did.
Senator Lankford of Oklahoma stood up and officially blocked the measure. So what does this all mean? If you read the transcripts of their exchange, both Senator Warnock and Senator Lankford explicitly verbally agree that TSA workers are essential.
Right.
They both agree these agents are working hard, and they absolutely agree they should be paid immediately. So if they both agree on the facts, and they both agree on the goal, why is the solution failing?
Because this specific standoff represents the very core of the modern partisan divide. The deadlock isn't about the goal. It's almost entirely about the method. Senator Lankford objected because he refused to pass a standalone bill. He argued that TSA pay needed to be handled through an automatic continuing resolution.
Let's ELI 5 that for a second. What exactly is a continuing resolution?
A continuing resolution is basically Congress hitting copy-paste on last year's budget. It's a temporary measure to keep the lights on and avoid a government shutdown when they can't agree on a new budget.
Gotcha.
But in this case, Senator Lankford wanted to attach new strings to it. He wanted a continuing resolution that was inherently tied to broader Homeland Security funding and major structural reforms to ICE, immigration, and customs enforcement.
Ah, okay. Let me make sure I and everyone listening really grasp this. Senator Langford wanted to use the urgency of paying the unpaid TSA workers as hostage leverage to force a vote on border policy changes.
Precisely. Meanwhile, Senator Warnock wanted a clean, isolated piece of legislation that handled the TSA pay issue entirely on its own, completely sterilized from the highly toxic debate over border enforcement.
This is wild. It shows you how absolute bipartisan agreement on a specific problem can still result in total partisan gridlock over the solution.
It really does.
The system isn't broken because they disagree on the facts. It's broken because one side wants to hold the cure hostage to force a surgery on something else entirely. The gears of the machine lock up because the operators can't agree on which lever to pull.
And that is the reality of Congress in context. It is a system where the procedural tactics often completely eclipse the policy itself.
It's a heavy realization. We've gone on quite a journey through the congressional record today. We started with the soaring macroeconomic rhetoric of the Balanced Budget Amendment and the fierce identity-driven clashes over the SAVE Act. We dug deep into the machinery, looking at how a motion to recommit acts as a political trapdoor, and how a motion to discharge bypasses committee gatekeepers. We saw how the parliamentary game is actually played.
And most importantly, we grounded all of those mechanical rules in the very real, very human impacts happening outside of Washington. From the devastating wildfires destroying the livelihoods of Nebraska cattle ranchers, to the tragic, somber loss of Ohio National Guardsmen, all the way to the financial anxiety of unpaid TSA agents standing at airport checkpoints today.
It is a massive amount of information to process, but we want to remind you listening, this is your government. The rhetoric, the rules, the hostage-taking, the gridlock, it all belongs to you.
Exactly.
And understanding these mechanics, understanding why a politician forces a vote they know will fail, or how they use the rule book to trap their opponents, is the ultimate shortcut to being a well-informed citizen. You don't have to be overwhelmed by the noise coming out of D.C. if you know how to read the blueprints of the machine.
This raises an important question, though, and it's something I want to leave you to mull over as we wrap up. We talked extensively today about the extensions of remarks, how lawmakers can submit written statements to the permanent historical record without ever speaking them aloud. If our representatives can officially log their arguments, their defenses, and their outrage without ever having to actually face their opponents on the floor, are we losing the art of actual persuasion in Congress?
Wow.
Is the congressional record slowly becoming just a collection of isolated pre-written speeches rather than a true, dynamic dialogue meant to forge consensus?
That is a fascinating thought. If the gears of the machine never actually touch each other, how can the engine ever move forward? We'll leave you to think on that. Remember, you don't have to take our word for any of this.
Nope, it's all public.
You can look up all of these specific remarks. You can track the exact bill numbers we discussed, like H.R. 556 and S. 1383, and you can read the full unfiltered record for today's date, March 18th, 2026, by visiting congress.gov. Next time you hear someone say the system is broken, remember the machine isn't exactly broken. It's just operating exactly the way it was built. Thanks for joining us, and we'll catch you on the next Deep Dive.